Yo, what is good, folks? It's your boy Sports PSP in the building. Hope everyone's enjoying a fantastic day. And of course, I got my man, Undisputed World Champ. Please go like and follow and subscribe to his content, man. I appreciate you for taking the time, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Just got through enjoying all this good football. So, hey, man, this was a some of the best games you ever want to see, man. Hey, huge
Crazy
game.
ones.
Yes,
Let's talk
sir.
about the first game, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, both of us we predicted that the Baltimore Ravens would win that game. You had it 34-20 Baltimore. I had it 27-24 Baltimore. But man, you got to give credit where credit is due with the Kansas City Chiefs. Their defense played more than exceptional. They played great. I mean, you look at outside of the touchdown pass by Lamar Jackson to Zay Flowers, you couldn't really ask anything more from the Chiefs defense. This is the best defense Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes during their time in Kansas City has had in a long time. And when you look at Patrick Mahomes, I just don't know how he gets it done, champ. I mean, 6 consecutive AFC Championship appearances. He's now making his 4th Super Bowl appearance. Travis Kelsey had a monster game too, reminding folks just how great he is.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, I feel like there's him, and there's everyone else, man. What's your thoughts?
Number one. Shout out to Patrick Mahomes. Shout out to the Chiefs Kingdom because man, I did not expect them to come there and hold the league MVP to 10 points. I did not expect them to do that. They out Baltimore, and essentially they shut them down. And I think a lot of blame goes on coaching as well because I think I heard you say this as well prior to the broadcast. I think that you stated that a lot of that goes on on John Harbaugh as well
I did say that. Yeah.
because of how undisciplined the team was during this time. This was a very critical game, and for them to not only have the triple crown defense, something that hasn't happened in the history of the NFL, but also to have the league MVP and to go out and lay a goose egg like that is flat out a shame. And not only that, you got to think about the ramifications of this game as well. This is arguably the strongest they have been in years. Last year we saw Baltimore, Lamar Jackson was hurt. Questions about his contract coming in. Granted, people are going to say, well, he was able to make it to the AFC Championship, excuse me. But on the flip side of that coin, they really laid an egg. Not to mention the fumble during one of the first half series, excuse me, and the interception when he tried to force it in the triple
Triple
coverage.
coverage. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really think he tried to press too hard at a certain point. And I don't think that, hey, although he used to be a part of my Georgia Bulldogs, I don't think Todd Monkey did a great idea in using Lamar Jackson the way he was supposed to. Now, granted, that's no excuse for Lamar Jackson laying an egg like he did, but I don't think he used that offense in the specifics that it was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you mentioned with Lamar. I mean, I did put a lot of blame on John Harbaugh because of those penalties, especially the one on Zay Flowers. I mean, you had an opportunity. There was some momentum after when Lamar Jackson hooked up with Zay Flowers on another deep pass, and then 15, and then the 15-yard penalty for taunting.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were close in they were near the red zone. They were in the red zone, and then Zay Flowers had a chance to score the touchdown. It was just a great play by Snead to knock the ball out of Zay Flowers' hands before the ball crossed the plane. I just felt like there were dumb penalties, dumb mistakes on the part of Baltimore, and you can't do that, especially of a team of Kansas City and their caliber and their championship pedigree. And I think this is going to be a really tough offseason for Baltimore. And unfortunately for Lamar, he's going to have to deal with a lot of critics tomorrow morning and throughout all the week and all the offseason. I still believe he's going to win the MVP, rightfully so. I still think with Baltimore, it's just a sad way to end the season because you were the favorites to win this one, and mind you, you said it. You everything that plays in your factor. Kansas City had to go without Joe Tooney. Remember, Willie Gay, he didn't play in that game. He had a neck injury.
Hmm.
So you had everything to go in your factor, as you previously said, and this is the type of performance that you gave up. So it's going to be a really tough offseason for Baltimore, man.
Hey, not only that, you got to think about the free agents that's going to come out of Baltimore as well. Are you going to be able to sign your top pass rusher in just a Metabupe? Are you going to be able to re-sign Clowney? Are you going to be able to re-sign some of the guys you have on the back end as well? Because right now you have about 10 free agents in there, and 5 of them are key players. So you're going to have to see, can you re-sign those guys, or can you kind of restructure some things in Lamar's contract in order to bring that entire team back? Because if not, the same team is not going to be here next year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now let's talk about Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes, man. I mean, for whatever reason, it seems like no matter the bigger the moment, it doesn't fold him. He just stays in it. And Baltimore's defense, to their credit in the second half, didn't allow not a single point in the second half. Not a single point. Champ, I really, honestly, if you're Baltimore, it should have actually been 28-7. Because if you look at it, 4th and 1, they failed to go for it on 4th and 1 with Isaiah Pacheco. And then Rasheed Rice, he was called back because of Trey Smith for the holding penalty. But if you look at Kansas City, man, Patrick Mahomes is just something special. I said he's top 3. I have Brady, Montana, I have Mahomes, I have Peyton, I have Rodgers. I'm not putting him above Montana at this moment right now. But what does it say about him? What does it say about this team? Because whether anyone likes it or not, they're not going anywhere.
To be honest with you, they're not going anywhere, and this is not even his greatest team. And to be honest with you, you have to take into account some what if scenarios that happened early in Patrick Mahomes' career. Because had Kareem Hunt not gotten in trouble during that first year when he won the MVP, do they win that Super Bowl against the New? Do they win that Super Bowl against Tampa Bay? You got to ask yourself that question because remember they were on the well. Do they win that NFC Championship?
You mean the AFC Championship game
The
against
AFC
New England?
Championship, excuse me. Yeah,
Yeah,
do they
the
win
D the
that
D
game?
four play. Yeah,
Yes, because the thing was, remember they were on a roll. They were on a roll that year. The first year he was there, won the MVP, threw for 50 touchdowns. And Kareem Hunt, without Kareem Hunt there, they didn't have a legitimate running game because remember Kareem Hunt had some off the field things that he had gotten involved with that
right.
unfortunately, caused him to be released, and he ended up playing for the Cleveland Browns behind Nick Chubb. But you have to ask yourself if that happens, is the run even more significant than it is now?
Right.
Because
No, I
because
feel
with
you.
a, because with a huge piece like that being off your team for a game as big as the NFC Championship against the Tom Brady, you have to ask yourself how much that was a factor. And for you to come out and not only come out of that game, but come back and win 2 Super Bowls after that is nothing short of amazing. Patrick Mahomes is very, very special. This is not even his best team. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in the offseason because they can get even more dangerous than they are now, especially with the emergence of Rasheed Rice and some of these running backs that they have. They have been literally just running guys into the ground. And not to mention this defense. I mean, this defense, and I may be jumping the gun. This defense is reminiscent of that defense that Andy Reid had with Jimmy Johnston up there in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, the only difference is I don't see a Brian Dawkins on this team. That's the only difference. But if you
I agree.
remember correctly, the help was up front with Jeremiah Trotter and some of those great defensive linemen that they had, the Javon Curses, a lot of those guys. But this defense is very, very, very reminiscent to that team up there in Philadelphia where he had with Jimmy Johnston. But this team right here, this is one of the most special teams, and hey, it's flat out mastery out there with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, and people don't want to give him credit where credit is due, but he can beat you with his legs, he can beat you with his arm, he can beat you in a multitude of ways. And I'm surprised that the Baltimore Ravens didn't put a spy on him after a while because he went for a lot of yards in that game.
He
So
did.
for them to not put a spy on it and make those adjustments in order to stop him as far as running the ball was kind of a baffling as well. But Patrick Mahomes and this team, hey, special, special, special. He will, I mean, even if he retires tomorrow after winning the Super Bowl, I mean, if he wins the Super Bowl, if he retires, then he's the first ballot Hall of Famer and arguably a top 3 quarterback of all time, if you want me to be honest about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can't ask. I mean, for Patrick Mahomes, I don't think we will ever see this type of production. Like, I don't care if it's 6, 7 years. I rather would see 6, 7 years of all time greatness than 15, 18 years of goodness. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind 15, 18 years of goodness, but to see him at this, and he's not even 30 years old yet, champ. He's still 28. He's still got prime left in him. Like I said, this is the best defense Kansas City has had in a while with him as the quarterback. Of course, the huge changes. They went from Bob Sutton to Steve Spagnuolo. Steve Spagnuolo has done an exceptional job with this defense. Andy Reid, man, say what you want. I mean, early on in his career, the narrative, the knock on him was clock management. Could he win the big one? He's dispelled that. So, Kansas City, and to your point, with the weapons, this is not the best weapons he's had to work with. This is without question. This is statistically, this is a down year for Patrick Mahomes. But
Mm-hmm.
for him to still, regardless of the circumstances, finds a way to get it done, that just tells you just how special of a talent he is. The Chiefs, and I also said it in one of my videos, they had a chance to get Deshaun Watson when they had the 10th pick, when they traded up the pick to Buffalo, but they went with Mahomes because the intangibles, the arm, there were a lot of comparisons between Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, and of course he has that baseball background, but the kid is just magic. Just regardless, no matter what the circumstances or odds are, he will find a way to get it done. Get it done, and that's why he's a once in a generation.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that comment about them looking like Jimmy Johnston's defense up there in Philadelphia, Steve Magnola was on that staff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why they look the way they do on that defensive side. He is basically a mirror of what Jimmy Johnston's defense was on this team right now.
All right. Now let's talk about the NFC Championship game, man.
Ooh.
I got to be honest with you. It was 24-7 at halftime. I thought that Detroit was going to cakewalk it, man, but out of nowhere, San Francisco, they came back from a 17-point deficit. Brock Purdy, I said this was going to be a statement game for him. Brandon Ayuk, I don't know how the hell he made that catch and it was tipped, but hey, Christian McCaffrey, although I am kind of concerned how he ended off the game though, but man, he was running. I give a lot of credit to Kyle Shanahan because had he not won this game, oh boy, he would have
Mm-hmm.
received a ton of criticism. Before that comeback, champ, it almost looked like last year's NFC Championship game in which the Eagles ran rough, blew the door out the window against the 49ers, man. It looked like it was almost about to look like it, but thank God it wasn't. What were your thoughts on the game, man?
Honestly, hey, number one, shout out to the 49er faithful. Y'all going back to the Super Bowl in familiar territory. And let's not forget, this is not the first time they've overcome a 17-point deficit. They overcame the same type of deficit against my Atlanta Falcons back in 2012. So when we had them 17-0 in the first half, and Colin Kaepernick, he was able to come back and just do some amazing things and lead them to a Super Bowl. Remember the Harbaugh Bowl. So he
Mm-hmm.
was able to lead them. So it's not. So this is not. Although that's not the same 49ers team, we've seen this from a 49er team before. Let's just say that. Number two, hey, great adjustment in the second half by the 49ers, and they was able to come back from that deficit. And not only that, hold the Detroit Lions and that high-powered offense to 7 points in the second half. That's good on their part. Now, the bad thing about this is, I will say this, and a lot of people won't say it. And you'll probably hear a lot of other content creators and a lot of sports guys say this in the morning. Dan Campbell lost this game.
I
Dan
did say,
Campbell lost this game.
didn't I tell you
And
he was going to do something dumb?
yes, you did. And I didn't believe you, but he did. Because if he kicks those two field goals and they make and more than and the thing about it, it was not like he was out of reach. The first one was damn near on the goal line. So you kick that one, that's 3 points. You go for the next one when you was down 27-24, that's 3 points. So guess what? You single-handedly cost your team 6 points that could have won you the game. You got to answer for that next offseason. Because this thing is, you can't keep taking, there's a fine line between being gutsy and being arrogant. There's a fine line, and I think he keeps crossing that line to the point where he just doesn't understand what textbook football is. This is the NFC Championship, something that the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan hasn't had in the last 30 years. They haven't been to an NFC Championship since the days of Barry Sanders and Wayne Funts. And you, as the coach, single-handedly cost them that game by not kicking the field goals the way you're supposed to be kicking them. Kick the field goals, put some points on the board. Hey, live to fight another day. Number two, they didn't target Amon-Ra St. Brown but one time in the second half. Another critical mistake. And you have to say this, when you only score 7 points in the second half after scoring 24 points, it's something to be said about coaching. And then not only that, you leave money on the board like that. You have to understand when it's time to be gutsy and when it's time to play textbook football. I understand playing not to lose because we've seen so many coaches like Marty Schottenheimer, rest in peace. We've seen so many coaches like Chuck Knox and even the great Dan Reeves, God rest his soul, who many criticize playing not to lose. But after a while, you realize the method of those men's madness. They played the game textbook football. Now, you live by it, you die by it. And unfortunately for Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions, they died at their Super Bowl hopes died at the hands of Dan Campbell and his arrogance and being gutsy and trying to go for everything when he should have played textbook football.
I completely agree, champ. And the reason why I said I had San Francisco winning this one because Dan Campbell was going to do something dumb. And we saw
Mm-hmm.
that. Remember the Monday Night Football game against the Dallas Cowboys when he decided to go for it for two? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, fine. I understand you want to play not to lose, but at the same time, you just got to take what's out there. Why would you be so? Why would you take that type of a risk? And look, he's young, he's gutsy. Coaching definitely played a huge role in it. Jared Goff, second half, I'm not going to say he was awful, but he could have played better, in my opinion. To your point about Amon-Ra St. Brown, only one time he was targeted. And the Lions offense, I don't know what happened, but in the first half, they were moving the ball so well. Jameson Williams, I mean, with that touchdown, Jamar Gibbs, it seemed like it was rolling. And 1967, since the Super Bowl era, 57 years. So now they're going to have to wait even longer just to get to a Super Bowl. And it's really unfortunate because in a city in Detroit, given what has transpired in that city and given the Lions franchise, from 0-16 to having talent like Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson and Ndamukong Suh, and you only managed to get to a couple of playoff appearances with them and couldn't even win a playoff game. This is really going to be a tough offseason for Detroit. Some will look at it and say, hey, moral victories because of what they were able to do, able to go that far. But I'm like, nah, in this situation, nah. They should have actually went to the Super Bowl because you had a 17-point lead. Your offense wasn't clicking in the second half. Your defense, I don't know what happened. That doesn't take away the San Francisco 49ers and what they did, but this is going to be a tough offseason for the Detroit Lions, and Dan Campbell's going to have a lot of answers to address.
I totally agree, and they're gonna. Luckily, they have a lot of their players under contract right about now. They don't, to my knowledge, I will say I will do some more research, and if they do, I will come. I will gladly come back and recant some statements. But well, I will say not recant statements, but come back and correct the statements. But to my knowledge, a lot of these guys are still under contract. A lot of these guys that they have, Aiden Hutchinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, all of these guys are on their rookie contract. I think the highest paid player on that team right now, even Aiden Hutchinson is on his rookie contract. Highest
Right.
paid guy on that team right now is Jared Goff, which is like, which 25 million is not a lot of money for a quarterback. If you really want to be honest about it, it's not a lot of money. So for him to be all those players to be under contract, and even Jahmyr Gibbs, he's still under a rookie contract. They just drafted him this year. So a lot of their key players are still under contract. They will have a bunch of money in cap space this coming off season, and they have a full draft. So they should get more dangerous throughout
There's
the
hope.
time. So, but there's a but on there. The Chicago Bears had the number one run defense in the NFL this year. How much better are they going to get during the offseason?
And they have the
And
number
you
one
have to
pick.
ask yourself, what are the Green Bay Packers brewing up in Green Bay with Jordan Love?
Hmm.
So the road is not going to be. I won't say it was easy for them this year because no season is easy, but it's not going to be as laid out for them next year, as it is this year, especially in their own division with Jordan Love being in his second year as the full-time starter. You have another Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, all pro caliber quarterback in your division, depending on what the Chicago Bears do with Justin Fields and that roster is going to really depend. Not to mention, hey, depending on what quarterback that the Minnesota Vikings get, you might want to watch them as well because they have one hell of a receiving core and their tight end core is great.
Yes,
So
they
you
do.
might want to watch to see what they do in the offseason, given what's coming up in the NFL draft with the NFL quarterbacks that they have coming up out of college. So this division is not going to be clear cut for the Detroit Lions like it was this year. And if you really want to be honest with you, although they made it to the NFC Championship this year, they left a lot to be desired as well because hell, they was in the lead. They was tied in first place in order to get a first round bye.
Right.
And although, we can blame it on the referees if you want to, that was pretty much squandered by again Dan Campbell. If you
Yep.
don't, if you go for it the first time and it don't work, okay, cool. Now you got a mulligan. You got a mulligan the second time. You still chose to go for it. Hey, after the second time, and if you keep going into a building and getting tossed out, you might not want to go into that building again.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned with Green Bay, particularly with Jordan Love, not just Jordan Love, that young roster with
Mm-hmm.
Romeo Dobbs and Hicks and Christian Watson and Matt LaFleur. Let's give him a lot of love to Matt LaFleur. He's actually a better
Mm-hmm.
coach than he's actually given credit for. Chicago is interesting to see because, as you mentioned, with the run offense, they have the number one overall pick. Because remember, even though Carolina has the worst record, they traded to get the number one overall pick last year and drafted Bryce Young. So it's interesting to see how Chi Town is actually going to do some things. But the good thing is with Detroit, they have cap space. So it's best for them that you try to address the areas, the needs that you need, and then you can build something in the draft. But bottom line, I said it. Dan Campbell was going to do something dumb, and unfortunately, it cost the Lions. And some people, like I said, they're going to look at this as a moral victory because, again, you did go up against the San Francisco 49ers. They've been to the NFC Championship game 3 consecutive times. But nah, you had a 17-point lead. Your offense was rolling in the first half. You couldn't ask more from your offense nor from the defense. And bad coaching. I felt like he should have went for the field goals. And Dan Campbell, he's going to have to make some serious adjustments heading into the offseason. And not only that, champ, what's also going to hurt for the Lions, and I'm shocked you forgot to mention this, Ben Johnson. he gonna leave.
Yeah, and that's going to be and that's a and I have to say that's a huge if, because the thing is,
I just
none
hope
of the
Washington takes him. I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, I'm hoping they do too, but it's just a huge if at this point, because I have to say this: none of the blockbuster coaches that we expected to get hired got hired, except for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah,
None
Belichick.
of the blockbuster coaches that I expected Ben Johnson to get hired before the NFC Championship got started. Yet he hasn't. I expected, Bill Belichick to have a job before the NFC Championship came along. It hasn't happened. Pete Carroll, it hasn't
Hasn't
happened.
happened.
Eric Bieniemy, it hasn't
Well,
happened.
it wasn't gonna happen. If he wasn't gonna get a head coaching job before, what do you think he's gonna get a head coaching job now?
Hey, anything is possible, I would say, but I
True that.
mean, but none of the blockbuster coaches that we expected have gotten jobs as of yet.
Yeah,
So, but now, is that a bad thing? No, because we're seeing an influx of very, very young coaches. And I didn't realize these guys were our age. Raheem Morris, he's not that seasoned, I will say. He was when he first became the Atlanta Falcons coach back during the interim days, he was only 32 years old. But of
hmm
course, certain circumstances prevented him from becoming the full-time guy. They doubled back and they hired him this time. But Brian Callahan, becoming the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, that definitely wasn't expected, especially when you
flabbergasted.
yeah, it was, especially when you fire a powerhouse like a Mike Vrabel. That would be, you fired a powerhouse that took you to an AFC championship. So you fire a powerhouse like that, that's definitely something he said. And he hasn't been hired, to his credit. He hasn't
He
been hired.
hasn't. He
Yeah,
hasn't.
so all of these blockbuster coaches that we expected to see get hired during the course of the season, they haven't got hired yet for some reason. And I would love to know what's going on, or why they haven't gotten hired as of yet. But yeah, none of those blockbuster guys that we expected have gotten hired as of yet. So if Ben Johnson comes back, it's going to be interesting to see, especially if they can get another weapon on the opposite side of Amon-Ra St. Brown as well.
Yeah, I mean, because you have him and you have Jameson Williams. So if you can add another piece to the puzzle, it would make the offense more explosive. I would like to see Detroit go into a different direction and get somebody on defense, maybe another guy to help out Aiden Hutchinson, or maybe a corner. That's just my opinion. But yeah, it's interesting that you brought up Bill Belichick. I just think, and it's just me, is it time for the old coaches to just get ahead with the times? Because if we're gonna say that about Dabo Sweeney, and look, Dabo's a great head coach. We can't take away what he accomplished in Clemson. But the problem with him nowadays, he talked about, well, I'm not doing the transfer portal. I'm not doing any of these other new things, the NIL deals. Bill, and then also, like I said, in the words of Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? Bill Belichick hasn't been the same without Tom Brady. I understand you worked with different quarterbacks, you worked with Matt Jones, but at the same time, you didn't put him in a situation to succeed, especially when you had Matt Patricia and Joe Judge as your offensive coordinators. You look at the year that you had last season, I actually thought that the Falcons were going to pick up Bill Belichick because he was interviewed, I think, for a second time with
Mm-hmm.
the Falcons. So you have him, a defensive mind. You keep him there. The only thing you just ask Bill Belichick to do, focus on the defense, focus on coaching this team. We do not want your services when it comes to evaluating the roster, because we saw what you've done in New England.
Well, I think that was the main factor, and I think that number one, he already would have had a team here already. I'm just being honest. The only thing that we would have needed was, and if you were going to come in and make some dramatic changes, it wouldn't have made much sense, to be honest with you, because, hey, in the great words of Will Smith, if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. The only thing that you need, according to the eye test, is a quarterback. So why
Right.
would you come in and try to bring the Patriot way there when the only thing you need to do is coach these guys up to a championship level in a weak division that you are familiar with having? Because remember, with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, they haven't had a real strong division there. Up until Josh Allen got there, they didn't even have another Pro Bowl quarterback in that division. So even after they traded Drew Bledsoe to the Buffalo Bills, he never lived up to that hype and got them to a playoff spot. So they didn't have a high caliber quarterback in that division that was going to take them somewhere. Even with the Brett Favre experiment in New York, even with that they went 11-5. With the Patriots went 11-5, and the Jets went 9-7 and didn't make the playoff. So they wouldn't have. It would have been the same situation that he would have had in New England. Unfortunately, I don't think that he was willing to say, I'm just going to be the coach and let Terry Fontenot run the front office and get him the personnel. Because to Bill Belichick's credit, there's been a lot of guys that were diamonds in the rough. We saw him. We saw Chris Hogan. We saw Deion Branch. We saw Givens. We saw David Givens. We saw David Patton. We saw a lot of those, guys that guys that were not necessarily household names on the New England Patriots, And that's why we call them a dynasty like no other, because the person that we will forever remember is Tom Brady. But the other guys were pretty much revolving doors.
Right.
And we remember a few, but they're very, very, we're not going to remember them as Hall of Famers. Like, yes, we love Julian Edelman. We're not going to remember him as a Hall of Famer. We will remember him as a great player, not necessarily a Hall of Famer. We remember a lot of those players, but we will not remember them as Hall of Famers. Even O.J. Mayo, the coach himself, Gerard Mayo, excuse me. We remember him from those Patriot team, but we will not remember him as a Hall of Fame type player. I think the first iteration of the Patriots was the greatest, because you saw guys like Richard Seymour. You saw guys like
Willie McGinnis, Teddy Bruschi.
Yes, those guys. Yes, those guys were the world beaters. After that team pretty much faded out, then you saw a lot of these diamonds in the rough that Bill Belichick was able to bring. But if you really want to be honest about it, how much greater would you have been if you would have drafted a Clay Matthews?
Yeah. If you, and that's the thing I think Belichick missed out on. And correct me if I'm wrong, champ. Speaking of Belichick, I don't want to take too much time.
Okay.
I heard this report. Was it true that Belichick wanted to move on from Brady because he didn't like the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo was drafted, and the fact that Belichick wanted to build him and make him the next guy, the successor to Brady? Brady didn't like it, and then Robert Kraft ultimately got involved and said Tom Brady's going to play for as long as he wants. Trade Garoppolo.
Yes, and my thing is, look, I will say this. We saw this happen before with quarterbacks. We saw where, quarterbacks have been traded due to trying to give their heir apparent a shot. We saw it in San Francisco with Joe Montana and Steve Young. We saw it recently in Denver. Excuse me. We saw it recently in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. We saw it again in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. We saw it with a little bit of everyone. So every team is trying to get their heir apparent ready. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it works. But you have to say to yourself, if you're a coach, hey, I'm already winning. I just won 4 to 5 Super Bowls. Why do I keep trying to push my legacy quarterback out of the door? And I understand people are trying to fire their quarterbacks and get rid of their quarterbacks before it's too late. But if you keep winning, then go ahead and keep winning and stop looking too far ahead when you're already having Super Bowls to your legacy. As long as you're winning Super Bowls and winning championships, I wouldn't even think about moving on. The minute that stops and injuries start piling up, which Tom Brady didn't have any until the end of his career, then it's time to move on.
I agree. One last question before we get up out of here. Do you think Ben Johnson, based on this game, do you think he cost himself a head coaching shot?
I don't think so. I mean, we saw Kyle Shanahan blow a 20. We saw Kyle Shanahan with my Atlanta Falcons, and he did what he did with them, and
I
it
don't want
didn't
to.
cost
I
them.
don't want you to dwell on the past. I
So
don't.
it,
Yeah,
it
I
is
don't
what
want
it
you.
is. History's already been written, but we've
Okay.
seen a lot of coaches, come do do kind of crazy things and come up with crazy game plans. And at the end of the day, man, he didn't have a lot of say so. You may be the offensive coordinator, but you didn't opt to go for it like the head coach did. You're not the head coach. And I think a lot of that had to do with Dan Gamble himself trying to overdo things. As we say, do too much. You're trying to do too much and you're ending up shooting yourself in the foot. I don't think that Ben Johnson had a lot to do with this loss. I think that a lot of this had to do with Dan Campbell and his gambling ways finally catching up to him at the wrong time. And like I said, he's been literally doing this all season. But to have this done on the biggest stage where you could have taken a place that hasn't had a Super Bowl ever, that
Never
hasn't had
been
a
to a Super
championship.
Bowl.
Yeah, never been to a Super Bowl. Their last championship was in 1957 with Bobby Lane, the year before the curse. You had a chance to do that and didn't do it, and you cost your team a Super Bowl run because you want to be arrogant. I think that falls a lot more on Dan Campbell than it does Ben Johnson. So I don't think he cost himself any type of coaching position at this point.
Yeah, I hope not because my Washington Commanders, they could sure use him. They could sure use any other coach. And also, I read the stat. They got some mad cap money, 73 million. So, to your point, even though I didn't believe in you in first about Montez Sweat and Chase Young, which I didn't mind trading Chase Young because of durability problems. But I told you about Montez Sweat. He had a
Yes, you
great year
did.
this year. But I will give you credit where credit is due. Washington saved up a ton of cap space. They had the number 2 pick in the draft. Seems to me they're probably going to draft a quarterback. Only who it is, whether Drake May or Jaden Daniels, maybe, who knows? Maybe Chicago, whether they want to keep Justin Fields or not. I think they signed Cliff Kingsbury.
No,
So,
they didn't sign him. They signed
oh, they
another.
didn't sign him yet. But if
They
they're
didn't
trying
sign
to
him.
get him, or some type of young guy, maybe they're trying to look at trying to draft Caleb Williams. But if Washington, hey, Washington got a bright future. The days of them being a laughing stock are no more. So this is gonna be great, and definitely 2 weeks from now, we're gonna do our Super Bowl picks on the Sports PSP. So, champ, as always, a pleasure. Tell them where to follow you at, man.
Hey, undisputed world champ on TikTok, world champ underscore 2.0 on IG. Newest episode of the Undisputed GOAT podcast will be this coming Thursday. And PSP, I'll be happy to have you. So
Will do. Also, tell them what time on Thursday.
9 o'clock on the dot.
Will do. And y'all know where to follow me, y'all. Sports PSP. Always make sure that you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and so much more. Thank you, champ. Thank y'all for hopping on, watching the pod. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day, and peace.